So for our second World Religions project, we had to go to LACMA and look at the Islamic contemporary art that they had there. It was a small exhibit, but it was also really interesting because you got to see the two colliding cultures based on tradition and now the capitalistic society that is intertwining itself into the old traditions of Islam. Interestingly enough, compared to modern countries in the West, countries under Islam are more fundamentally rooted in their religion. This one is a piece that is a neon light fixture, and it's relating to Allah as God. I thought that was really interesting that they chose to use neon because that kind of symbolizes that God is a light, in my opinion. It was also really interesting because that's also showing the modernism about trying to relate their religion to modern times and using modern technologies to highlight their fundamental beliefs. An interesting part of the exhibit that was actually the majority was focused on women. In traditional Islam, women are supposed to be very modest, the housekeepers. And in these pictures, there's a lot of writing over the woman, and that's in Arabic, the traditional language of Islam. And so that was interesting because it seems like the writing represents that the women are dictated what they're supposed to do based on the teachings of Muhammad. You can see in this one that this woman, she's clothed in very modest clothing. She also has a gun. This kind of relates to a lot of the violence that is happening in Islamic countries, but also relates to how women's roles are kind of changing into more of a progressive light, I guess. In this one, they look like they're kind of spies, but they're engaging in work, which is very different from traditional Islam teachings. In this one, they're showing legs and skin, which is not highly recommended in traditional Islam teachings either. It kind of shows how their culture is changing as they become more involved in Western society. This one shows some women who are dressed in hijabs, but they're also reading, which is not allowed for women, or at least not really endorsed in traditional Islam either, education. So it's just challenging traditional beliefs. Again, this one shows a woman who is not wearing hijab. That is also challenging Islam tradition. And her legs are shown. And if you can look closely, there's product labels, which kind of shows the capitalism that is invading the countries of Islam. This one also shows product labelization. It's Fanta cans and just ordinary things like Coca-Cola on a woman. And it kind of shows, again, that there's a lot of new effects that are changing the country's culture. So this is once again showing that there's a lot of political strife. There's some dictatorships, some of them in some of the countries like Iran. Those are some of the leaders right there. But there's also this one of the chair highlights that there's a lot of violence in these countries over religion. Not all of the countries of Islam, not at all. But in some of them, like where we've been fighting in Iraq, there's a lot of bombings. This one shows a gang that is part of the must be in an Islam country. I believe those are Fanta cans or something like that again, so it kind of shows that there's two cultures that are colliding again, and there's a lot of strife because of it. And this photo, I think, just represents the cognizance of the people that there's a lot of confusion, a lot of sadness right now. Not everyone again, but because of this violence that's happening and pervades some of the culture, I think it's a little bit difficult. Okay, thank you. In relation to our world religions class, this exhibit kind of taught me that even though another culture might seem like it is completely foreign and that there's nothing that connects us, there are a lot of connections in our world. And even if we live across different seas and live in different countries, there's a lot of things that tie us together. And that's not just true with Islam, it's true with all of our different